Your fight or flight response is ruining your poetry. Have you ever sat down to write poetry and felt your heart racing, your palms sweating, that blank page staring back at you like a predator ready to pounce? You're not alone. What you're experiencing isn't writer's block. It's your ancient survival system hijacking your creative process. Before we dive deep into this phenomenon, I want to share something that's been transformative for countless poets and writers. If you're serious about reclaiming your creative power, check out https prockstem.system.io, Prockstem, where we explore these deeper patterns, and https://wap.com /breathe-and-flow for practical techniques to center yourself before creating. But first, let's understand what's really happening in your nervous system when you try to write. Your fight or flight response, that ancient alarm system designed to keep our ancestors alive when facing saber-toothed tigers, doesn't distinguish between physical danger and creative vulnerability. When you sit down to write poetry, especially personal or emotionally honest work, your nervous system often interprets this as a threat. Think about it. Poetry requires you to be vulnerable, to expose your inner world, to risk judgment. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm center, perceives this emotional exposure as dangerous as any physical threat. The result? Your sympathetic nervous system floods your body with stress hormones. When you're in fight or flight mode, several things happen that absolutely devastate your creative capacity. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex thinking, creativity, and emotional regulation, goes offline. Blood flow redirects to your muscles, preparing you to run or fight. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Your heart rate spikes. Your mind races with worst-case scenarios. In this state, accessing the quiet, contemplative space needed for poetry becomes nearly impossible. You're literally trying to create art while your body thinks it's under attack. Let me paint you a clearer picture of what's happening neurologically. When your fight or flight response activates, your brain releases a cocktail of stress chemicals: adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol. These chemicals are incredible for escaping immediate physical danger, but they're creativity killers. Cortisol, in particular, impairs memory formation and retrieval, exactly what you need to access those perfect words and images floating in your subconscious. The stress response also narrows your attention to focus only on immediate threats, while poetry requires expansive associative thinking. Studies in neuroscience show that creativity flourishes in what researchers call the default mode network, a state of relaxed, unfocused attention where different parts of your brain can communicate freely. Fight or flight does the exact opposite, creating rigid tunnel vision thinking. Furthermore, chronic activation of this stress response creates a feedback loop. Each time you approach your writing with anxiety, you reinforce the neural pathway that associates poetry with danger. Your brain literally learns to fear your own creativity. I've worked with hundreds of poets who describe this exact experience. Sarah, a talented writer from Portland, told me she'd sit at her desk for hours, physically unable to write a single line. Her chest would tighten, her thoughts would spiral, and she'd end up scrolling social media instead of creating. Marcus, a slam poet from Chicago, said his fight or flight response was so intense that he'd literally shake when trying to write about his childhood trauma. The very experiences that could fuel his most powerful work became inaccessible because his nervous system wouldn't let him approach them safely. These aren't isolated cases. I see this pattern everywhere. Gifted writers whose own stress responses have become their biggest creative obstacle. They have the talent, the stories, the emotional depth, but their nervous system is stuck in protection mode. The tragedy is that many poets interpret this physiological response as evidence that they're not real writers or that they don't have what it takes. They blame themselves for what is actually a normal biological response to perceived vulnerability. Here's the good news. You can retrain your nervous system to feel safe during creative expression. It requires understanding that your body needs to feel physically and emotionally secure before your creativity can flow freely. The solution isn't to push through the fear or just write anyway. That approach often backfires, creating more stress and reinforcing the danger association. Instead, you need to actively engage your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest response, before you begin writing. This involves three key components: nervous system regulation, environmental safety cues, and gradual exposure therapy for your creativity. First, nervous system regulation through breathwork, movement, and mindfulness practices. When you consciously activate your vagus nerve, the main pathway of your parasympathetic system, you signal to your body that it's safe to be vulnerable and open. Second, creating environmental safety cues. This might mean writing in a specific, comfortable location, using certain music or scents, or establishing rituals that signal to your nervous system that this is a safe space for expression. Third, gradual exposure, starting with low-stakes creative exercises that don't trigger your stress response, then slowly building up to more vulnerable writing as your nervous system learns to stay regulated during creative work. If you're ready to dive deeper into these nervous system regulation techniques, http://satchotwap.com Breathe and Flow offers comprehensive practices specifically designed for creative professionals, and https prockstem.systeme.io. Prockstem provides the framework for understanding these deeper patterns in your creative life. Let me give you three concrete techniques you can use immediately. The 4-7-8 breath reset. Before you write, breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Do this 4 times. This activates your vagus nerve and shifts you into a parasympathetic state. Your heart rate will slow, your mind will quiet, and your body will remember it's safe to create. The safety scan. Physically look around your writing space and name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. This grounds you in the present moment and reassures your nervous system that there's no immediate danger. The permission practice. Before writing anything vulnerable, literally say out loud, I give myself permission to write badly. I give myself permission to feel whatever comes up. I give myself permission to stop if I need to. This creates psychological safety and reduces the performance pressure that triggers stress responses. These aren't just feel-good exercises. They're based on solid neuroscience and polyvagal theory. They work because they address the root cause, a dysregulated nervous system that perceives creativity as threat. Understanding your fight or flight response isn't just about improving your poetry, it's about reclaiming your full creative potential. When you learn to regulate your nervous system, you gain access to states of consciousness that most people never experience. The flow state where words pour through you effortlessly, the expansive awareness where metaphors arise naturally, the deep presence where your most authentic voice emerges. Many of history's greatest poets understood this intuitively. They developed personal practices, meditation, walking, specific environments or times of day that help them access these regulated creative states. What we now know through neuroscience, they discovered through careful attention to their own creative process. Your fight or flight response isn't your enemy. It's trying to protect you. But it needs updating. It needs to learn that vulnerability in service of art is not the same as vulnerability in the face of danger. It needs to understand that the very experiences it's trying to protect you from might be the source of your most powerful creative work. This is why so many poets struggle with the same patterns: perfectionism, procrastination, creative blocks, imposter syndrome. These aren't character flaws, they're nervous system responses to perceived creative threat. Your poetry is waiting for you on the other side of a regulated nervous system. The words you're meant to write, the stories you're meant to tell, the emotions you're meant to transform into art, they're all there, just beyond the wall of fight or flight activation. The question isn't whether you have talent or important things to say. The question is whether you're willing to learn how to feel safe enough to access them. If you're ready to stop letting your stress response sabotage your creativity, I encourage you to explore the resources I've mentioned. https Prockstem, systeme.io, Prockstem, for understanding these deeper creative patterns, and https archwap.com, breathe and flow, for practical nervous system regulation techniques. Your fight or flight response has been trying to protect you, but now it's time to teach it that your creativity is not your enemy. It's your birthright. The world needs the poetry that only you can write. But first, you need to feel safe enough to write it. Thank you.